Using the focus bug. Now that you know your way around inside of FocalPoint, let's talk about using the focus bug. The focus bug is the principal control that you'll use all the time. It's designed to work just like a lens and should have the same type of tactile feeling. Once you get the hang of using it, making adjustments in FocalPoint becomes very fast. The focus bug appears as a wireframe bug right in the center of your preview window. There's two different shapes of the focus bug. The first one is round, in which the bug has a round body and 4 legs. You can also select the planar shape by going to the aperture pane and selecting planar instead. The planar focus bug has a square body and only has 2 legs. We'll talk about the differences between those in the aperture shape movie. Let's just go back to the round to get you started. The job of the focus bug is to help you define the sweet spot. That's the area that's going to stay in focus. To get started, click and hold on the body of the focus bug. You can then drag the focus bug to position it over the center of the area you want to keep in focus. Notice that when you click on the focus bug, that a grid appears. This grid shows you the boundaries of the sweet spot. Once you've dragged it into the position where you want it, go ahead and grab any of the 4 legs to adjust the size as well as the rotation of the sweet spot. The legs are the 4 short appendages that extend out of the body and have a solid white ball on the end of them. When you approach them, they'll glow blue to let you know that you can select it. I'm going to start out by grabbing the leg on the bottom and clicking. Again, you'll be able to see the grid. Now, pull it to change the shape of the sweet spot. You can also rotate it to rotate the sweet spot. So I'm going to set it to a slight rotation and a fairly long shape. There we go. Now, grabbing the opposite legs, I can change the shape to make it fatter or skinnier. It might be necessary to reposition the focus bug to get the sweet spot right where you want it. There we go. Now we've used the focus bug to define the size, shape, and position of the sweet spot. Now it's time to control the blur. The blur is adjusted by using the antennas of the bug. The focus bug has 2 antennas. They look like legs, but are longer and have a larger open ball on the end of them. Let's start out with the right-hand antenna. You adjust the antenna by pulling them and twisting them just like the legs. So I'm going to start by pulling the right-hand antenna out, and you'll notice as I do this that a transparent tooltip appears and it tells me the blur amount and feather percentage. So as the antenna gets longer or shorter, it controls the amount of blur. A long antenna length creates a large amount of blur, and a short antenna creates a small amount of blur. Let's go ahead and leave it at 100% for an illustration purpose. The second control is the feather, which is controlled by the angle of the antenna. As I move the antenna down, the feather decreases, and as I move it up, the feather increases. The feather refers to the transition between the area that is in focus and the area that is out of focus, or what we call the sweet spot and the bokeh. Sometimes it's easier to see how the feather is working by turning the grid off temporarily. You can do this by going up to View, Focus Bug Grid, and setting it to Off. Now, as I move the feather up and down, I'm going to move it all the way to its minimum, to a feather of 0, you'll be able to see a hard edge between the area that's in focus and the area that's out of focus. In most cases, you're not going to want to use this. It creates a very unrealistic look. And now as I move the feather up, you'll see how that edge becomes softer and a more natural look. Usually your feather is going to be somewhere between the 30 and 70% range. Alright, now the left-hand antenna controls the type of blur and the opacity of the blur. Let's go ahead and talk about the type of blur first. I'm going to move the antenna all the way down to the bottom. This creates no motion blur. It gives a very smooth, soft, out-of-focus region. As I increase the angle of the left-hand antenna, you'll see more distortion or more motion appearing in the blurred area. If we go all the way to the top, up to 100%, you'll see that the area in the pillow and the areas down in the bottom right-hand corner both have more of a pulling or motion feel, like the image near the edge of an image circle. Alright, now by adjusting the length of the left antenna, we can control the opacity of the sweet spot. What this really means is it lets us add a little bit of blur to the center if we want to. Normally you're going to leave this at its long setting, at a 100% opacity. This protects the sweet spot 100%. This way there'll be no blur, no softening within the middle area. As I decrease the length or the opacity, you'll see how I'm adding a little bit of blur to the middle. And if I bring it all the way in, you see the entire image is now blurry. Like I said, most of the time you're probably going to want that opacity pretty high, around 100%. So you can see how we've used the focus bug to control the size, position, and shape of the sweet spot, as well as the amount of blur, the feather on the blur, also the type of blur, and the opacity of the sweet spot. These are the major controls inside a focal point. There's a couple more things I want to show you about the focus bug. One of them is how to adjust the 3D tilt. I'm just going to cover this very quickly here, but we'll go into greater detail in the 3D tilt movie on how you'd like to use this. What I mean by the 3D tilt is just like using a tilt-shift lens, I can control the plane of focus. On a Mac, if I hold down the Option key, or a Windows computer, hold down the Alt key, and click in the center of the focus bug's body, the grid will appear, and now if I drag, I'll be able to change the tilt of the plane of focus, and you'll see how the grid tilts in 3D. This is just like adjusting the tilt on a lens standard on a view camera or by adjusting a tilt-shift lens. We'll talk about how this works and what the effect looks like in a separate movie. There are a couple of view controls that can be helpful when using the focus bug, and they can all be accessed from the View menu. The first is the Show Hide Mask option. This will make a black and white mask appear of the focus bug. This makes it easy to understand options like feather and the 3D tilt. You watch as I adjust the feather to a smaller feather mount, the edge becomes very hard, and as I increase it up, it becomes softer. You can also see how as I adjust the 3D tilt, how it changes the feather across the entire plane of focus. The other option that's useful is to toggle the preview on and off. You can do this with the Command P or Control P keyboard shortcut, or by using the toggle down here in the bottom of the toolbar, which will toggle the blur effect on and off, so you can preview the original versus what you get if you press the Apply button. You can also toggle the focus bug info on or off. This is the helpful little transparent tooltips that tells you the position and options as you adjust them. Below that is the focus bug opacity. Don't confuse this with the aperture opacity. All this does is control how opaque the focus bug tool is. At its default, it's 100%, but it can be a little overpowering on some images, especially if they're high key, so you might want to reduce it to make it easier to preview. You can do this by going to View, Focus Bug Opacity, and selecting a lower value. I'm going to try 40%. There you go. You can now see how the focus bug appears more transparent or more ghosted. This way it doesn't interfere with your image as much. The last option is the focus bug grid control. Normally it's on auto. In auto mode, the grid will appear automatically whenever you adjust the focus bug. You can also select on all the time or off all the time. If you want to reset the focus bug to its original position, you can do that by going to Edit and Reset All. This will reset all the options. Finally, the last note on the focus bug is if you move your cursor outside of the preview area, the focus bug will disappear temporarily, making it easy to preview the results of your image without the focus bug being present. Alright, that should be enough to get you started. Go ahead and check out the other video tutorials to learn even more.